Okay, so Rich Horwath is the founder and president of the Strategic Thinking Institute. He's a former chief strategy officer and is currently a professor of management here at the Lake Forest Graduate School. He's the author of 4 books, including his most recent deep dive, The Proven Method for Building Strategy. Rich's work has been profiled in business publications, including Investors Business Daily and Forbes, and he has appeared on NBC, WGN, and Fox TV. Ladies and gentlemen, Rich Horwath. Our next panelist is Mark Paulson. Mark is the founder and managing partner of Bridge Avenue Partners, where he is responsible for managing the business and providing business strategy, change management, and executive coaching services. In addition, Mark is also president and chief operating officer of Verve Life, a digital music company that provides digital marketing offerings to consumer products industry. Mark has consulted with over 250 private and public sector global organizations, including Sears, Canada, Best Buy, Pizza Hut, Burger King, McDonald's, IBM, American Express, Chase Manhattan, and JP Morgan. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Paulson. And our final panelist is Burke Fernandez. Burke is an insightful and skilled strategist. He's currently the managing director of UNA Worldwide. Some of his achievements include leading multiple fundraising efforts for Asia-based companies, the co-founding of a multinational company with a focus on a wide range of business investment opportunities in emerging markets, directing a $6 billion 6-company business through strategic growth in the midst of intense competition, and as vice president of Bank One in Asia Pacific, he recruited a world-class multinational team in Hong Kong. Drawing upon his solid background across industries with leaders such as Baxter International, First Chicago, Bank One, which is now part of JP Morgan Chase, and CNA Financial, Burke offers a solid foundation in evaluating, structuring, and negotiating investments and business development opportunities in both established and emerging markets. Ladies and gentlemen, Burke Fernandez. And finally, our moderator for this evening is our very own Associate Dean of Research Development and Innovation here at the Lake Forest campus, and he's also an instructor of the Strategic Thinking course, Mr. Manish Shah.
So we're going to have a discussion about business strategy in turbulent times, and the subtext of this discussion is how can we use innovation as a source of competitive advantage. And I think we have our very, very experienced panelists there. I think they have probably more than 100 years of experience in between them. tells their age, but different story. So before we start the panel discussion, I just thought it would be appropriate to tell you what we are doing at the school that's different in these turbulent times. So as John alluded to in his presentation, we have reorganized ourselves and we have formed this new group called R&D and Innovation, and I'm very proud to be part of that group. And the charter of this group is to come up with new products and services, both degree and non-degree programs, I should say, for the school. And I think by now you should have seen the survey for the Executive Education Series that was sent out to all alums. And if you haven't seen it or responded, please do so. I think we have sent practically, I think, maybe 100 reminders already and flooded your mailbox. So it's hard to ignore. But for those of you who are not familiar with this program, it's a series of contemporary courses in management, such as innovation, social media, and sustainability that we plan to offer to the alums. And if all goes well, like John said, we are going to plan this, or we're going to launch this early next year. So with that as a preface, and also one last thing, Jeff Yeager, who's part of this group, was kind enough to come up to me and suggest an idea for a new program, a master's degree in logistics. So if you have any ideas, this is a very talented group, and I would hate to lose the brain power that's in this room please come up to me. I'll also give you my email address in case you have one already. It's mshah, MSHAH, at lfgsm.edu. I don't have my new business card, so pardon me for that. So let's get into the panel discussion. Again, the topic is what kind of business strategy should we be using in these turbulent times? And also, how do we use innovation as a source of competitive advantage? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a question for our panelists and then open the floor up for questions. So the question to the panelists is, what does a company need to do differently in turbulent times versus good times in terms of formulating a strategy?
Thanks, Manish. As far as developing strategy in turbulent times versus good times, I don't think you should do anything differently. I'm of the mindset that great companies are continually looking at their business strategy and evaluating the context of the business. So what's changing with the market, customers, competitors, and within our company. I think all too often we get blindsided because we're so focused on one of those areas or we're focused on new products that we actually miss the new value that we potentially could be providing in the marketplace. So I think my biggest takeaway is that in turbulent times, you still need to be continually looking at those 4 areas of the business to understand what's changing and how does that affect the strategy.
I agree. My clients, let me define turbulent, because you can look at that various ways. You can define turbulent as when you're in a high growth industry and there's tremendous change taking place. You can define turbulent during recessions, when everyone is having a hard time meeting the payroll or trying to get market share, whatever. You can also define turbulent, I found, especially today, relative to uncertainty. And so in each of those areas, there's different strategies that you have. During the time when you have rapid product introductions or industry churn, industry growth, that defines a lot of activities relative to defining products and services and markets and things like that. When you're during recession, you're trying to step back and make your business, your operating model as productive, as efficient as you can. And at the same time, obviously, try to do more with less resources. And then during uncertain times, I have clients right now who are very uncertain relative to what's going to take place relative to tax strategy and industry strategies in the marketplace. And they're sitting on a lot of cash. But they are, at the same time, formulating plans, scenarios, relative to what might happen if this happens. And so the strategies do differ.
Thanks. You get 3 strategy guys together, we'll all agree with each other. But my basic premise as I look at, I asked the question, what turbulent times? We're always in turbulent times. Every company is constantly in turbulent times. You have scarce resources. So I want to know at the outset, what's happening in the market? Where is the market moving? Where are your customers migrating to? What changes are taking place in the market? How big is that market? How do you go after that market? How do you stay? What is your competition doing? Who is your competition? What are they doing in the market? Because at the end of the day, you've got to trump your competition. That's the game. And your strategies change based upon how you approach the market and how they're migrating. One basic assumption, markets are constantly moving from left to right. Customers are moving. There's a constant migration. How do you move towards that? How do you understand where your business is on the curve? And a simple bell-shaped curve. Where is your business? How do you position yourself to put some distance between you and your competition? And that's the game. That's day in and day out. That's your core business. You've got to knock in, bring in the earnings year after year. You've got to lock that in. Then you can do innovation as long as you're successful.
Okay. Thank you, Burke. I would like to open up the floor for questions. If anybody has a question about this.
Do you see any major shifts? I've got a startup company. I bring a new, what I believe is kind of a fairly neat product to market. Do you see changes in the marketplace today in terms of people bringing brand new products that are just, you know, require 0 to 60, or do you see people being more incremental in terms of their innovation to kind of add on new products or features that complement or are more easily understood by consumers today? Do you see those differences in the marketplace?
I think the answer is yes on both. And it depends upon the industry that you're in and the technology that's employed. You take a look at Apple, what Apple is doing relative to, they began with the iPod, they went to the iPhone, now they have the iPad, they have now the TV. And that's white space, where they're taking and converging technologies together into brand new products and brand new services for companies. You take a look at industries that are slow growth that may only grow at 1 or 2% per year. There it's more incremental change, tweaking the products, tweaking the services, etc. So it depends.
You know, if you look at testing, 1, 2, I feel like I'm back at the Holiday Inn doing my lounge singing. I'll do that tonight, though. You know, I think if you look at innovation, you know, historically, generally if it's a new emerging market, so I'm not sure about your product specifically, but if it's a new emerging market, generally where the innovation lies is around the product itself. If you're in a more mature market, and I know some of you work in the healthcare industry here, I was chatting with earlier, so if you're in pharmaceuticals, medical device, tends to be a little bit more mature, then innovation tends to happen more focally around customers and process. So process internally or customers. And so I think you can kind of look at innovation to understand, you know, where are we with this market, and is product, customer, or process really going to be the focal point? And I think too often we think about innovation as product only. And the reality is, for many of you working in mature industries, you're not coming out with the blockbuster new product, you know, every year. So innovation is really about how do we create new value, either for external customers or internal customers. And there's, you know, if you look at the literature, there's 14, 16 different types of innovation. So, you know, as you bring your new product out, think about the ancillary things like marketing, experience, and those other areas where you potentially could innovate as well.
2 quick points. At the outset, you need to know, firstly, what is the probability of success? Can you really, how long will it take for you to bring this product to market? And how quickly will your customers adopt? The adoption rate, you've got to figure out your adoption rate in year 1, year 2, year 3. How much money do you have to launch? Where do you launch? Which market do you launch? So you can get a big bang. And secondly, can you get a premium for the product? Will you get a premium for this new product over what's in the market? Because there's a lot of Me Too innovation going on. You've got to constantly innovate, and there's a lot of Me Too innovation. Is this one of those products that's new to the world, that has a big bang potential? For example, the pharmaceuticals. I was in Baxter when we brought Advait into the market, and many of us were skeptical. This turned out that the adoption rate ramped up fairly quickly, and turned out to be $1 billion product in about 2.5 years. That's pharmaceutical, different game from probably your product, but you got to take a look at how long does it take, how much does it cost, how do I approach this?
Any other questions? Okay.
I have a question about brand, which you might expect from a marketing person. But when we're talking about white space and this idea of sort of innovating, and John actually talked about sort of taking you sort of out there, any advice for those of us who are breaking our lock-ins and trying to sort of reach out there about how not to go too far out there so our customers don't say, wow, they've lost sight of what their brand really stands for, or they've lost sight of their vision? So any advice about where to know where that line is between really innovative and adding new value for the customers and getting away from what they stand for?
I think the key is knowing what your brand does and really testing your brand in the market, getting some feedback from the market, from the customers. Does it really create brand pull? And if you have brand pull, how do you package that so that your brand is recognized in the market, your brand means something. It stands for quality, it stands for reliability, it stands for innovation. And that's what you hang your hat on and you stick with that. But you've got to get tremendous amount of feedback from the market to really know what your brand is and what it does. So almost an outside-in look as opposed to an inside-out look.
On the other side of that too is that you have to look at your competencies, because you could have the best strategy in the world, but you may not have the resources or the skills and competencies internal to actually do what you want to do in that white space.
You know, Kate, I know you, so you know I'm very simple-minded. And so I like to keep strategy simple as well. And I think it, you know, for a brand, for a product, for a service, I think you always have to answer the question, what's the differentiated value we're providing here? If you can answer that question competently, then I think you're keeping within that boundary where there is going to be resonance with customers, and if there is differentiated value that they will pay for, then you're in the boundary of still making a profit as well. Too often I see, especially in the U.S., because I work in Europe and Asia as well, too often in the U.S. we're all about how are we better. And here's a newsflash, there is no better. Better is subjective in your mind. The only thing customers care about is what's the differentiated value you bring to the table.
Thanks, Rich.
Getting back to the initial question about turbulent times, when you hear that, a lot of people think automatically it's you're talking about a negative environment, but turbulent could be an excess of risk, or it could be a surplus of opportunities. So what does the company do besides a lot of the strategies you talked about to monitor that so you don't become overly aggressive or overly conservative?
One of the frameworks I use when I do consulting, because it's a good framework, I think, is the maturity curve, where you have either companies or products being introduced. They go through a rapid growth within the industry or within themselves. They mature at some time. Many companies go into then a declining phase and perhaps a death relative to themselves or the products they have. The strategies that you employ are all different relative to those phases. And what's really important during the growth phase, during the turbulent phases of it, is the prioritization that you have upon the various projects, initiatives that you're trying to launch into the marketplace. Because there's 1,000 things that you could do. And what's important is to, based upon the value proposition that you have in the marketplace and what you're trying to achieve, where do we place the chits? A few years ago, I did some work with Sears Canada, and it was a project that would save them. At that time, they were a $4 billion corporation, and we were working on a project that would save them $400 million. A big number across their supply chain. But we found that we could not get the attention or the resources from the organization. So we went to the management committee and we said, you're doing too many projects. And they had 320 projects that they were doing across the organization. We itemized all that stuff and looked at it. 5 of those projects represented 90% of the value to the business. And so we immediately said, you get to get rid of 300 of these projects, come back to them eventually, but focus on the things that are really important.
Just to quickly back up that statement, as you look at R&D departments across the spectrum, a lot of them are chasing projects that have a less than 10-20% probability of success. And you've got to have the guts to kill some of these and kill them and make sure they're dead, because they're all resurface. It's what is the risk-reward ratio? What is it going to get you at the end of it? Where is this business going? How much more life does this business have? The fundamental question for me with every one of my clients is, how much more time do you have? in this business? Should you trade it off now? Should you sell it? Should you get out of it? And really getting them, and that's a tough question for a lot of companies. There's a lot of emotional attachment to businesses, to people, to process, when you get out. And that's why I tend to like the private equity model. They're in for a finite amount of time, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, and they're out. Going into a transaction, they have an exit plan laid out. They're out in 3 years, you either take it public, you sell it off, you do something. So it's not, you're not holding on to this thing forever, because nothing lasts forever. The Schumpeterian model, the gales of destruction. And that's where I come out on this. You got to constantly be pushing this and pushing it to a point where, you know, when do you get out?
I appreciate the fact that you looked at turbulent times as a possible opportunity. You know, I think too often we hear turbulent and we think, you know, everything's bad and everything's hurting us. The funny thing is, you know, if you look at the research out of Harvard, 70% of companies that are in financial trouble, that trouble is caused by decisions about strategy. And when they looked at the research, only 4% of a company's poor performance was due to the overall economy, 4%. So keep that in mind. You know, if you've got leadership that, you know, for the last 2 years and for the next 2 years is going to continue to blame the economy or the recession because they're 30 or 40% behind where they should be, at some point you need to hand them a mirror and say, look, there needs to be accountability here. And, you know, Mark had mentioned a tool he uses. I'm a big believer in what Mark said and Burke as well. You have to prioritize. And so if you see it as an opportunity, I think you have to ask yourself, what's the probability of achievement? Scale of 1 to 10, whatever you want to use. How likely would we be able to achieve this if we put resources to it? And if we do put resources to it and achieve it, what's going to be the impact on our business?
I just have a couple of things to say about that. The process we are using at the school for innovation, and to your point, we have finite amount of resources and we can get a host of ideas. So we don't want to be chasing everything that comes on our plate. So we're using a process called discovery-driven planning that is popularized by a lady by the name of Rita McGrath. There's a book out there on that. And according to Clayton Christensen, who is, you know, considered to be the guru in innovation, this approach lends itself really well to innovation, where you have a bunch of opportunities, but you lack a disciplined approach of which ones you should approach in the first place, and then take it through this process and abandon it when you think that it shouldn't be given more resources. So it's every step of the way you're evaluating whether this idea has potential, right from ideation to framing, to market testing, to piloting, and final launch. So basically you're not doing what Apple did with Newton, plunked $350 million in a product that had no market. So we have another question on the table.
Yes, so just to follow up on Rich's statement, many economists believe and see last 2 years not as a recession where you have dip and you go up. They see it as fundamental realignment of economy, where we go from overconsumption to some sustained level of consumption on some lower level than we used to be like 10 years ago. So do you see companies thinking about this and kind of rethinking their strategies and taking this into account, looking themselves in the mirror, seeing this as a threat or opportunities? Or
Yeah, great question, Dan. And I think the reality is the companies that are really rethinking their strategies today didn't really have strategies in the past. You know, the great companies are always making the tough trade-offs early on. You know, that's why, you know, it kills me when you see companies like General Motors, you know, not able to negotiate with unions forever, blaming legacy costs, and the fact that they just weren't able to provide differentiated value for customers in the last few years, and all of a sudden it's all of our problem. Well, if you made the tough trade-offs in the past, then you don't have to make dramatic strategy shifts all the time. Now, to Burke's point, if the market's changing, customers are changing, you're going to make those changes. But if you've got the discipline to make good trade-offs on a continual basis, and as Manish pointed out, with innovation, you're not taking all comers, then you're going to be in much better shape than a lot of companies that haven't made the trade-offs. So, I liken it to, if you have trees on your property, every few years you've got to prune some of the low branches, some of the dead branches to promote new growth. The great companies have pruning shears. The companies that haven't done a good job with strategy have to pull out the chainsaw.
Well said. I think one of the key points is, as you bring a business in, a group of business, and they're lining up for investment dollars, what is the return on this? What are the best projects? What have the best chance of success? And if you're not returning greater than 12%, the cost of capital is slightly lower now, but if you cannot return the cost of capital, you have no reason to be. You got a question, you can go out and buy a bond. Sell the business, buy a bond.
Question here.
My question is very simple. Why would you have any different strategy during tough economy, tough times, tough anything, than you would during good times? If you have a good, solid strategy, you're not afraid to change, you constantly tune into what the marketplace is doing. What difference with good times, bad times? You're a well-managed company. You're going to be a well-managed company.
I agree with that. It's many times what it comes down to is the priorities of the initiatives. Because many times when companies are growing fast and they're expanding into different geographies and they're making a lot of acquisitions and things like that, or expanding into new products, when times get tough and things slow down in the recessions, then they change their focus and they do things internally to streamline and consolidate and take out cost and those types of things. But the key thing is they're constantly doing something. It's just that many times people don't take during growth periods the time to really optimize the organization or streamline. So it's just a matter of degree, I think, as far as emphasis.
What did Jack Welch say? He said, if you change when you have to, it's too late.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is so true.
Exactly.
So true.
So there's a question there.
I actually got 3 questions.
You got 3 people.
The first one is, when you talk about looking in the mirror, I agree with that statement, but my question for the panel is, in the companies that you've worked for, the people that have stood up and told the king he doesn't have any clothes on, how many of them are around next week to help out with the change?
And I want to make a comment to that. They're all entrepreneurs. That's the reason probably they are entrepreneurs.
We were all fired.
At the end of the day, you've got to be able to live with yourself if you don't stand up and make those tough calls. You've got to make that you're the custodian, you're there for a finite amount of time. This is, I look at the folks that I work for, the companies I work for, not as employment forever. There's a finite amount of time you're there for, and you're the custodian. You have to do something that you're entrusted to. You have to make the tough calls. It is unpopular at times, and it has been unpopular. And so what? You just go on, because that's what we need today in corporate America. People who will make those tough calls.
The mirror that I use generally are objective assessments. So for instance, there's 3 assessments I use: for the company, for the individual, and then for just the business itself. And when you go through these types of assessments and you have senior management, you have middle management, you have frontline folks take these assessments, what comes back, oddly enough, is that generally the organization overall doesn't really understand what the strategy is supposed to be. So for the companies that are struggling, a way to create that urgency or that fire sometimes is to do an objective assessment and have different people at different levels complete it to kind of gauge where things are. I just started working with a Fortune 100 company last week, and we started doing assessments. And for the organization, from a score of 0 being low, 20 being high, 20 questions, Right now, the average score is 4 out of 20 when it comes to the organization's ability to do strategy. And these are from people at all different levels. This isn't me and my advice. This is what people in the organization are saying. So now, will leadership listen to that when I hold that mirror up for them? Maybe, maybe not. But the reality is the good leaders, I think to your point a minute ago, if it's a well-run company, they're gonna respect the fact that there is different input other than theirs.
I think part of it is I have worked with many, many different executives and managers through the years who are technically very strong. And they know what the business needs to do, they know how things need to change. But many times it's the ability to communicate that same proposal, if you will, to the executives. What I have found is that most organizations, the biggest hindrance to change, because at the end of the day, innovation is a change. Whether you change a process or change the organization or change a product or service, you're changing something. And so you have to step back and say, what is it from a change management perspective that allows us to get there? And many times it's the senior management team, the executives, who are in the way. They're impeding the progress of that necessary change. And I see that all the time, because many times executives, they build something up. It's their baby. This is what their legacy is. This is their heritage. And when there's a need to change the marketplace, when there's some type of disruption, they have a very difficult time of accepting that change. And I have found as a consultant, you have to lead with facts. You have to show the benefit. You have to show that by going this journey, you're going to be in a better position than you are today. And myself, in situations, I've walked away from client situations because I was not being successful in conveying the need to the executive team. So they're wasting their dollars from a consulting perspective because they just were not able to make that journey.
I think we have time for one last question.
I actually have a follow-up to that. How do you identify those people? I mean, there's the bell curve of those leaders out there. What are some of the techniques to use to identify those leaders who are more open to change? And of course, they would be, by definition, open to innovation and things like that as well. Any advice on that?
Some of them have your track record. I think you spend a fair amount of time with them in probing their management styles, their leadership styles, and a combination of emotional intelligence and really getting at that emotional intelligence within them. What kind of a leader is this person? Really assessing that and making a judgment. And, it's a tough call. Some people behave in different situations differently. So
part of it is having that conversation with the leaders when you're a change agent, when you're trying to initiate some change. Very early on in consulting projects, it's the same thing internal when you're working internal. You're presenting the opportunities to the client, the executive team, and you're saying, here's what we could do. Here's the benefits from doing that journey. And you're assessing very quickly whether or not the organization is going to be able to make that change, and whether there's sacred cows or not invented here or lack of resources or whatever the case may be for making the change that you want them to make. And so every executive has a different personality, and you could do various profiles, whether it's Myers-Briggs or DISC or 10,000 other profiles in the marketplace. And many times when you do studies with executives, you do team profiling to figure out what the nature of the team is and how they think and how they act and things like that. That is oftentimes used to do when you're in conjunction with strategy projects, because you're trying to figure out where the support will come from within the team and who's going to resist the change and those types of things.
Just real quick, I talked to two groups of people. I talked about that leader, to your point, if, are they change oriented? I talked to the heads of the other functional areas, because I think, to Burke's point, past behavior is a big indicator. So if I'm working with the VP of marketing, I'll talk to the VP of HR, the VP of Sales, the VP of Finance. They will give you usually a pretty good bird's eye view of how change-oriented that person is, and do they allow change from other parts of the organization to happen too, or to Mark's point, are they trying to control their fiefdom? And then I'll try and talk to people that are 2 levels below them if it's a hierarchical organization. Because people 2 levels below, if it's a private conversation, they'll let you know if the change has happened or if it was a flavor of the month, because quite frankly, a lot of times it is a flavor of the month.
Okay, I think all good things have to come to an end, so we're out of time, but I want to thank all the panelists, Rich, Mark, and Burke. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
And